Welcome to today's deep dive. We have a really unusual mission for you today.
Yeah, it's definitely not our typical source material.
Right, exactly. Usually we're looking at, dense white papers or heavy textbooks, but today we are unpacking a single digital image.
Just one image.
Yeah. It contains exactly 15 words. The title is Collateral Damage. Below that, there are 4 tags: hashtag fragment, hashtag proximity, hashtag consequence, and hashtag risk.
And then there's the core text itself.
Right. The text reads, and I'll just quote it directly here: "Watch the company you keep, lest you become collateral damage of somebody else's karma plan."
It's just so dense. I mean, it's a masterclass in extreme minimalism.
It really is. I just love how much philosophical weight is packed into those 15 words. It's incredible.
The author has basically taken these massive, sprawling concepts about human relationships and just, condensed them into a single warning.
Which is what we're going to deconstruct for you today, word by word, tag by tag. Because those hashtags, that metadata attached to the quote, they completely elevate this from a simple proverb into a really complex framework for evaluating your life.
They absolutely do.
So let's just tear into the first half of that quote. Watch the company you keep. I mean, we've heard this since we were on the playground, right?
Oh, yeah, it's the ultimate parental advice.
Exactly. But traditionally, that advice is framed entirely around, like, moral contagion. Like, don't hang out with the kids skipping class, or you'll start skipping class.
Right, or if your friends lie, you'll start lying.
Exactly. But the hashtags change that.
They do. Because the underlying assumption in that traditional framing is that character is porous, right? The danger of bad company is that their bad habits will just sort of seep into your personality.
Yeah.
But the author completely shatters that interpretation by attaching the tags hashtag proximity and hashtag risk.
Which fundamentally changes the threat level.
Yes, completely.
Right. Because if we're talking about risk and proximity, this is no longer a warning about adopting someone's bad habits. The threat isn't that my friend's lack of ambition will, rub off on me.
Right, it's literal.
Yeah, the threat is a literal situational hazard created by simply standing next to them. Think about it for a second. Imagine you're standing in an open field during a massive thunderstorm.
Okay, a thunderstorm.
And you are standing right next to a towering, 50-foot oak tree.
Yeah.
Now, let's say you have impeccable character. You pay your taxes, you volunteer, you're a loyal friend.
You're a saint.
Right, you've done absolutely nothing wrong. But when the lightning strikes, it doesn't pause to run a background check on your morals.
No, it hits the tallest object in the field.
Exactly. And because you are standing underneath that tree, you absorb the shockwave. The lightning wasn't aiming for you at all. It only cared about your proximity.
That is it's a harsh but highly accurate way to look at how danger operates in the real world.
Yeah.
We prefer to think our personal virtues act as a protective shield, but physics and proximity, they operate on entirely different rules. By tagging this with hashtag risks, the author is basically demanding that we view our social and professional circles through the lens of liability.
Which is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
By tagging this with risk, are they suggesting we need to, perform active, ongoing risk assessments of our friends, rather than just judging their character?
I think so, yes. Because we generally think of risk as the outcome of our own direct choices, right? Like, you choose to drive aggressively, you bear the risk of an accident.
Right, or you invest in a volatile stock, you bear the financial risk.
Exactly. But this text proposes a much more uncomfortable reality. In a highly connected world, danger is contagious by association alone. Proximity basically acts as a risk multiplier.
See, that raises a really difficult dilemma for how we maintain our relationships. Because if we start treating our friends and colleagues purely as risk liabilities, doesn't that make us incredibly cynical?
It does feel cynical at first glance.
I mean, we all have people in our lives whose worlds are currently a mess, but we stay close to them out of loyalty.
Sure, and there is a deep cognitive dissonance there. Loving someone who is simultaneously a situational hazard is tough. But evaluating someone as a risk doesn't require you to stop loving them.
Okay, so what does it require?
It requires you to manage your proximity to their choices. Think about network theory for a second.
Okay.
In any interconnected system, a node, which in this case is you, is vulnerable to the failures of the nodes it connects to.
So proximity isn't just about physical distance then. It's about how deeply our systems are entangled.
Exactly that. We live in an era of reputational proximity and digital proximity. So let's say a close professional associate of yours is suddenly exposed for horrific, unethical behavior online.
Oh, wow, yeah.
The internet does not neatly sever your connection to them. The algorithm, the public, the industry, they all link you to that fallout. Your reputation takes a hit simply because your name is in their orbit.
So the risk was transferred to you without your active participation in their bad deeds.
Precisely.
Which means we really do need to perform this ongoing situational awareness of the people we tether ourselves to. It's no longer just asking, are they a good person at heart? It's asking, what kind of storm are they currently courting, and am I standing in the blast radius?
And blast radius is the operative concept here. When someone is courting disaster, the eventual explosion never stays contained to just their footprint.
Right, which leads us perfectly to the second half of the quote, the part that names exactly what is exploding.
The karma plan.
Exactly. Lest you become collateral damage of somebody else's karma plan. That phrasing karma plan is just so deliberate. It's tied directly to that third tag, right? Hashtag consequence.
Yes, because the word plan strips away the illusion of randomness.
Right.
Like when someone's life blows up because of a long string of terrible decisions, we often say they had bad luck. The author is totally rejecting that.
A plan implies inevitability.
Exactly. It implies a systematic itinerary of consequences that has been building up for a long time.
But I need to push back heavily on the mechanics of this. Because here's where I get hung up. The concept of karma is traditionally rooted in ultimate cosmic justice, right?
That's the popular understanding, yes.
The scales of the universe balancing themselves out. An exact one-to-one matching of cause and effect. But if the universe has designed a targeted systematic plan to balance the scales for someone who's making terrible choices.
Why does it hit you?
Yeah. Why does that plan allow innocent bystanders like us to be destroyed? Doesn't the existence of collateral damage completely invalidate the precise nature of karma?
That contradiction is honestly the most profound part of the text. You are touching on our deep-seated psychological need for fairness.
Well, yeah, we want it to be fair.
Of course we do. We want karma to be a surgical strike, a laser beam that only vaporizes the guilty party and leaves the innocent perfectly untouched. But the tag, hashtag consequence, forces us to look at the physics of reality rather than our idealized version of justice.
You're saying consequence doesn't obey the rules of moral fairness.
Not at all. Consequence obeys the rules of entanglement. Let's look at a practical mechanism. Imagine two co-founders of a startup.
Okay, I'm with you.
Founder A is honest, hardworking, and totally ethical. Founder B secretly commits massive financial fraud.
Yikes.
Right. So when the authorities uncover the fraud, that is Founder B's karma plan executing. But the bank doesn't just freeze Founder B's half of the checking account.
Oh, I see. They freeze the whole thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The entire company account is frozen. The business operations halt. Founder A's livelihood is destroyed. The justice was aimed at Founder B, but the structural reality of the consequence took down everyone in the room.
The blast radius doesn't discriminate. The authorities aren't saying, well, Founder A is innocent, so we'll let them keep operating. The system itself is compromised.
Exactly. Think back to your oak tree analogy. A tree rots from the inside out over years.
Right.
That rot is the cause. The tree eventually snapping and falling is the inevitable karma plan. But when hundreds of tons of wood come crashing down into the forest, that falling tree does not selectively crush only the things that deserve to be crushed.
It flattens everything.
Right. The young sapling, the wildflowers, the rocks, it crushes whatever happens to be in its path.
So the falling tree is the karma plan, and the crushed wildflowers are the collateral damage.
Yes.
Wow. That is incredibly sobering. Because if we look closely at our own lives, we can usually see the trees that are rotting.
We almost always can.
Like we watch a family member burn through their savings on reckless gambles, or a friend repeatedly lie to their spouse, or a colleague cut corners on safety protocols. We see the bad decisions stacking up.
And yet we often choose to stay standing right underneath those branches.
Why do we do that?
Yeah.
If the signs of the rotting tree are so obvious, why does it take us so long to step out of the way?
Honestly, denial is a powerful force, especially when love or loyalty is involved. We convince ourselves that our personal innocence will somehow alter the physics of the situation.
We think, oh, it's their life, they'll face the music, but I'll be fine because I didn't make those choices.
Exactly. But the author of this text is practically shaking the reader by the shoulders, using the hashtag consequence to say, when the music plays, anyone on the dance floor is getting swept into the chaos.
Which makes the title of the piece so chilling. Collateral damage is a military term. It describes unintended civilian casualties during a targeted strike.
Right.
The general issuing the strike didn't set out to hurt the civilians, But the bomb's shockwave couldn't be contained. The universe's reckoning is a blunt instrument.
A profoundly blunt instrument. And this lack of discrimination by the universe actually explains the structural choices the author made in presenting this text.
What do you mean?
Well, we've unpacked the philosophy, but we need to examine the architecture of the image itself. The very first tag the author used is #fragment.
Ah, right. Let's dive into that architecture. Because it is weird, right? Why choose to present this incredibly heavy concept as a fragmented, isolated thought?
It's totally stripped of context.
Exactly. There's no surrounding context. We don't know who wrote it. We don't know the inciting incident. We don't know who betrayed whom to prompt this realization. It's just this shard of text floating in a digital void.
Human brains are pattern-matching machines, and we abhor a vacuum. When a piece of information lacks context, our instinct is to supply our own.
Oh, I see where you're going.
If the author had written, like, a 4-page essay detailing how their business partner ruined their credit score, you would read it as an observer.
Yeah, I would read it as a piece of gossip, essentially. I'd think, man, that sounds awful for them, but I would remain safely detached from the emotional reality of it.
Exactly, but by stripping away the specific narrative, the author removes your ability to be a passive observer. The omission of a backstory elevates the text from a personal complaint into a universal heuristic.
A heuristic being like a mental shortcut.
Right, a rule of thumb that helps us solve problems and make judgments quickly.
So because this is just a fragment without a specific story attached, it acts like a psychological mirror.
Yes.
Because when I first read the phrase, somebody else's karma plan, I didn't think about the anonymous author. I instantly pictured specific people from my own past.
You filled in the blanks.
I did. I saw the faces of people who were walking disasters whose orbit I barely escaped. The lack of context forced me to plug my own life into the equation.
And that is the immense power of decontextualization. The author isn't asking for your sympathy regarding their situation. They are demanding situational awareness regarding yours.
Wow.
The fragment forces you to look at your current social and professional circles and ask a very difficult question. Who in my life is a ticking clock?
Who is a ticking clock? Man, that is the practical application of this entire deep dive. But how do we act on that awareness without becoming utterly ruthless?
That's the hard part.
Right. If I identify a friend who is a ticking clock, what is the mechanism for protecting myself without completely abandoning them in their time of need?
This brings us back to the difference between moral judgment and risk management.
Yeah.
You do not have to condemn the person whose karma plan is unfolding.
Okay.
You don't have to write a manifesto about their flaws and cut them off completely. You simply have to manage your proximity. You can offer emotional support from a distance without co-signing their loans, going into business with them, or tying your professional reputation to their public actions.
It's setting a perimeter. You recognize the building is coming down, so you step outside the drop zone.
Precisely.
You can still hand them a hard hat, but you aren't going to stand under the collapsing roof with them just to prove your loyalty.
Because loyalty does not require you to become a casualty of someone.
Well said. Let's synthesize this journey, because we have traveled far beyond a simple piece of playground advice.
We really have.
We started with the realization that evaluating our surroundings isn't just about avoiding bad habits. Thanks to network theory and the realities of a hyper-connected world, danger is contagious. Reputational and situational proximity mean that someone else's choices can become your localized hazard.
We moved from the illusion of moral contagion to the reality of physical and systemic entanglement.
Yes. And from there, we explored the brutal mechanics of the karma plan. We had to let go of the comforting idea that cosmic justice is a surgical strike.
The universe uses a blunt instrument.
A very blunt instrument. When consequences arrive, they sweep through shared bank accounts, shared homes, and shared reputations. The blast radius doesn't pause to verify your innocence.
And finally, we saw how the #fragment structure forces us to use this information. It serves as a stark, unclouded mirror, demanding that we conduct a ruthless inventory of our own proximity to risk.
It really is a vital exercise in self-preservation. It is about protecting your peace, your livelihood, and your future from being derailed by a storm you had absolutely no part in creating.
The human instinct is to always cast ourselves as the protagonist, right? The innocent bystander, merely trying to navigate a world full of walking hazards.
But before we let you go, consider the other side of that equation.
Oh, this is a good point.
Yeah, we've spent this entire deep dive looking outward, worrying about how to protect ourselves from being the collateral damage in someone else's karma plan. But take this 15-word fragment and flip the perspective entirely on its head.
Turn the mirror around.
Exactly. Look at the people standing closest to you right now in your own life. The colleagues who trust your judgment, the friends who defend your reputation, the family whose stability is tied to your decisions. If your own karma plan were to be suddenly executed today, who would become your collateral damage?